Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at my Infernoid deck. Now, Infernoids are obviously a completely brand new archetype, so this deck will definitely be very experimental. I'm trying out some things. But with any new deck type, I'm not, an expert on it at all, so as time goes on, I'll expand on it, try to see what's going to be going for it. They just introduced this archetype, but they introduced it in a really good way. They really put a ton of cards. I think that like 11 cards for Infernoids were in the pack, which is really, really cool. So they have a really great starting point for a deck type, but I still think there's a good chance we're going to see it get expanded as time goes on. Infernoids are a very unique archetype in that they're only available through special summons and only available through their specific types of special summons. So they're very unique. I don't think there's any other archetype in the game that's only focused on just the fact that it can only special summon, and that makes it have high restrictions, but it also gives it some interesting versatility and ability to do a lot of really cool plays. And there's a lot of interesting tech that you can kind of throw in to kind of make it work and set up what you need to do. But I'll kind of talk about how the archetype works, how my cards work, and what I'm doing in this deck. So to start things off, we're going to be running Blaster. So a really interesting thing about Infernoids is it's a Fiend archetype that's all fire. So with that, we're able to easily use Blaster because we have such a graveyard heavy deck. Blaster can get summoned all the time, and then you can make additional plays off it too. So Blaster is a really good card in this deck. Additionally, you can discard, which is great for Infernoids. You can destroy stuff. It's just a really valuable card in a deck like this. And then we're going to get into the actual Infernoids. You want a really high amount of Infernoids because of how their effects work. You need to have a lot of them. So it really just depends on how many you want specifically. But don't try to have this deck just have a few in it. It's not going to work at all unless you really load it up with Infernoids. We're running 3 Antra. You could run this at 2. I feel like having high amounts of the lower level Infernoids is very useful, but Antra isn't as essential. Still can be pretty useful. I do like running it at 3. And then Attondel. Attondel is a really powerful one, so I do like having this at 3. It's up to you, but obviously very powerful. Again, like I was saying with, I guess you call them the babies, the lower level Infernoids, you probably want to run more of them at 3, so Harmadik is the one that you'd probably want to run at 3. And then the boss, pretty much, Onuncu. This one is very powerful, but its restrictions are pretty high, having to, require 3 Infernoids. So because of that requirement, I wouldn't say to run this at 3, definitely not. If you are going to run this at 2. It's really up to you, but I think running it at 1 is a pretty good amount. I've seen some people run it at 2. I'm still kind of debating it, but I think I like 1 for this deck. And then we're running 3 Patrulea. Again, you want with the babies, especially this one, which is very useful. So I definitely would say to run 3. Piaty, I'm not as big of a fan of. Definitely don't run this at 3, 1 or 2. I think 1 is fine. Again, like I was saying, you want a lot of Infernoids, so in that sense you could run more of it, but you wouldn't run more of it just because of the card itself. It's not that impressive. And then 3 Seitsemas, another very powerful one, so I do like having 3 of this. Just an alternate one that can be a very powerful card. A lot of these Infernoids have very powerful effects, so this is definitely a good example of that. And then the very little tech we have in this deck, Kuribandit, very helpful in a deck type like this, and Raiden. I do love Raiden in this deck specifically because you can build your graveyard, do synchro plays, make other things happen very easily for you, so I think Raiden just works out really nicely for you. I should mention, with the Infernoids, the babies you can summon from the hand, the higher level ones you can summon from the hand or graveyard. So you run a high amount of the lower level ones so you can get them in your hand and use them, and then the graveyard ones just happen with the other effects. So just works really nicely and combines with what you want to do very easily. So now for the spell support in this deck, Barrier from a Different Dimension, obviously very good in this deck type. Miracle Dig, very rare you'll see this card in any deck, but this deck specifically actually can make really good use of it. Don't run it at too many because it requires a lot of monsters to work for you. Monster Gate can be a very nice one to set up things for you in this deck type. And then 3 MST, you could run MST at 2. I like 3 MST in this deck specifically because think about the cards you might run up against that will completely shut down this deck, like Vanity's Emptiness or Dimensional Fissure or anything like that that can manage the graveyard or the banish zone, or you have to make use of both zones, the graveyard and banish zone, to go through what you want to do in this deck type. And if either one is locked down or you're limited to one of them, it really gets hard with what you're trying to do with this deck type. So again, 3 MST I like for this deck. Raigeki you don't really need in this deck type, but I do like having it just to blow up cards. Reasoning is a very, very powerful card for this deck. Sets up what you want to do very, very quickly in this deck and just gets the deck going. Snatch Steal, again, a very powerful card in this deck and, most decks. And then we have 2 Void Seer. It's kind of like the Evil Swarm card. It kind of protects you, but it can protect you twice. So I do really like this card for this deck type. And then 3 Breaks Through Skill. Obviously, in a deck type like this makes a lot of sense. And 2 Eye the Void. This one I'm still kind of debating because it's situational, but I do like its ability to get free summons for you that you can make plays. So I feel like this card can combine to make a lot of really good things happen for you. In the extra deck, we're going to be doing a lot of really interesting things. So Black Rose with some of our levels, Goyo, Scrap Archfiend. I do want to mention that the Infernoids don't specify effect monsters, so if you use cards that aren't effect monsters, you can bypass a lot of their restrictions. So Scrap Archfiend is one of those cards that can bypass that. Scrap Dragon, Star Eater with some of the levels we have makes a lot of sense. Stardust Dragon with the XYZs, a lot of interesting variety. Castel, Dante with the level 3s, we can use Dante to make some good stuff happen for us. So I do like Dante for this deck type. Felgrand with some of our 8s, Exciton, Gemnite, Pearl. Again, if you avoid effect monsters, you can abuse some stuff. So I really like Pearl for this deck type. And then Alucard, obviously, with the level 3s. Lavalval Chain, obvious in this deck type, very good. Silent Honor and Big Eye. We have a good amount of level 7, so you can run more than just Big Eye, but I will talk about that a little bit in the side deck. So now for the side deck, if you haven't seen a video of mine before, in the side deck I like to just talk about other ideas, other recommended cards, other interesting stuff for the deck type. You could run this deck with normal monsters, like I was saying, if you bypass effect monsters you could do some things. I just feel like it doesn't accomplish much with this deck, but maybe you could do sort of a hybrid thing that would work out. Card Trooper is a very good card for this deck, easy to use for milling. Effect Veiler, you can see the power of a card like this in this deck type. Lila, I feel like Lila is not really necessary. It can help you with this deck type specifically. It deals with back row and it helps you mill obviously, but I don't think it's necessary at all. Necroface, you can see the power of Necroface in this deck type. Torbus to the Forbidden Realms, really interesting because again these fiends are fire, so you can use this card to search out the Infernoids, which is really, really nice actually. You can use Tour Guide, that's another engine you could do, run Scarm, I'm already running Dante, you can use Dante with that. Just another type of engine so you could do additional things. You're not going to use it to bring out the Infernoids, obviously. You're going to use it to set up the graveyard and bring out rank 3s for you. The new one, A Wild Monster Appears, actually works with Infernoids really well, but it's because of its restrictions on it, I feel like we can accomplish things without this card, but it still works nicely for this deck. Foolish Burial, obviously, you can tell why that would be good. Soul Absorption again. The Void Expansion, I'm not a huge fan of this field card, and you have to maintain it. So I feel like it could be really useful, but overall I don't think it's necessary for the deck type. But I've seen some people run it, so you can definitely consider it. Fiend Comedian is a very risky card that might have some use in this deck. Hatebuster, you can see the power of that in this deck type. Needlebug Nest again to mill. And there's a huge variety of other XYZs and Synchros. Gaia Knight, if you want, other non-effect Synchros or XYZs, all that stuff could be useful. You can run Dracosac, other rank 4s, other rank 7s, other rank 8s, other Synchros, Crimson Blader, anything like that. You could run discard cards. I've seen some people run Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, which is really powerful for this deck type. No reason not to run it, I just chose not to with some of the other stuff I'm doing. So there's a lot of really cool options for this deck type. You just really have to think about it. Because it's brand new, I'm still trying out things. I'm seeing what works best. I'm not going to say this is definitively how the deck should be run, but I'm really having a lot of fun with this deck type. I really think it has a lot of potential as a strong deck. Just, not as strong as some of the decks currently. Maybe when we see more support, but I still think it's pretty high up there because of its crazy amount of ability to just get things out and make powerful effects happen. The Infernoids have great effects, and they really can blow up your opponent when they set up what they want to do. But yeah, that's my Infernoid deck. If you guys have any Infernoid decks, any suggestions, any cards I didn't think about, probably because I'm so new to the deck, let me know in the comments. You could talk about what cards you use and just make some suggestions for me, and I'll update it, as time goes on and as we get new cards. But that's about it for me. As always, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later.